Okay, let's get this out of the way right now. Literally any of the MCU characters could show up in a Disney revival of Daredevil. Howard the Duck? Why not? Anything is possible when you have Disney money. And a revival hasn't even been confirmed yet. The rumor mill is grinding, but at least at the time of writing, it's still just speculation. So this video is really going to be about which of the MCU characters I believe are most likely to show up in a new Daredevil series. And maybe I'll throw in a few wild cards for comedic effect. After all, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has a lot of wild cards to choose from. Let's do the obvious one first. The fact that Charlie Cox's return as Daredevil first happened in Spider-Man No Way Home is only part of the reason the web-slinger is on this list. The main reason is because Spider-Man and Daredevil have been friends since the 1960s. In fact, that's probably why the Daredevil reveal happened on Spider-Man's turf. These two have one of the closest friendships in Marvel Comics. Sure, they fought each other a bit when they first met in Amazing Spider-Man number 16, but that's how all great friendships start, right? With punches? Charlie Cox and Tom Holland already have good on-screen chemistry, and our friendly neighborhood wall crawler would work as an excellent foil to serious and brooding Matt Murdock. The two don't always agree on how to deal with crime, but they still have a fair amount in common. Skin-tight red spandex, super senses, and father figures who don't live to see them graduate high school. Ouch. Sorry, guys. They also share a general geographical location, so it's easier to keep in contact. New York is both the biggest and smallest place in the entire MCU, depending on the writer, so the heroes who live there are running into each other constantly. In fact, Matt Murdock shares a general area code with a ton of different superhero teams and lone operators. The Defenders obviously didn't do well enough to merit a return to the screen, but there are several other Big Apple-based teams that could easily appear alongside Daredevil. Some of them are pretty fantastic. Yes, I'm talking about the Fantastic Four. Again, the rights to the Fantastic Four were acquired by Disney back in 2019, and they are coming to the MCU. While a direct release date hasn't been revealed, Marvel Studios did officially announce that Jon Watts, director of Spider-Man No Way Home, was set to take on the helm of the First Family's Marvel debut. Perhaps Daredevil will have the opportunity to punch Dr. Doom in the face when Sue Storm and company finally arrive. After all, Matt Murdock has known the Fantastic Four almost as long as he's been Daredevil. I'm serious. In the first ever issue of Daredevil, Matt Murdock becomes a very yellow version of the blind superhero. In the second ever Daredevil comic, the Fantastic Four hire Matt Murdock to be their lawyer. The comic has a real corporate synergy plotline, but to be brief, the Thing is sent to find someone to help the Fantastic Four with real estate law, and Matt ends up with access to the Baxter Building. He fights Electro, gets shot into space, and ends the issue by escaping from the police on horseback. So not only is the superpowered family local to Matt, they also have professional history. It makes a lot of sense, in a corporate synergy kind of way, to have this relationship appear on screen in Disney's spiderweb of related TV shows and movies. You know who else is likely to have a professional history with a New York lawyer? Another New York lawyer. Jennifer Walters, or She-Hulk if you want to use her made-up name, gains her powers after receiving a blood transfusion from her cousin, Bruce Banner. She's not quite as strong as Bruce, but she retains her intelligence and even gains control over her transformations during her adventures as a superhero. She-Hulk is also notable in that she often performs her day job while in her superhero form. Jennifer has even worked for the district attorney as a 7-foot-tall green-skinned bodybuilder type. It's a real flex, honestly. This girl does not give a fuck. Jennifer doesn't have the same long comic history with Daredevil as some other people on this list. The first issue of her comic came out in 1980 for one, but it's still a little shocking that they didn't cross paths until the early 2010s. Still, it would be a great setup to have these two attorneys battle it out in court. I wonder who garners more sympathy from the jury, the blind civil rights attorney or the 7-foot-tall green Amazon? Riri Williams is the plucky young protege who constructs her own Iron Man armor in her suburban home. It's no cave with a box of scraps, but it's still very impressive. She was recognized from a young age for her extreme intellect and her technological know-how quickly drew the attention of old Shellhead. At least that's the case in the comics. But given that the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Tony Stark is long dead before Riri was even introduced, that might be a little hard. Maybe they had an unseen previous relationship. Was little Riri also at that failed Stark Expo? Maybe she's in the crowd right here. Comic Riri is featured in the will of her mentor. Well, living will, as Tony was left in a coma after the events of Civil War II, even civiler war. MCU Riri may also be mentioned in Tony's will, which means that she may need a real good estate lawyer. That's right, Matt Murdock could soon be defending Riri's right to a portion of Tony's vast wealth. Personally, I would be happy if a Daredevil reboot was just an extended version of the will reading scene from Knives Out. I know I keep coming back to Matt Murdock's status as a lawyer, and that other heroes may need representation. However, in fairness to me, meeting other heroes was the whole reason Stan Lee made Daredevil a lawyer in the first place. It's funny how a group of vigilantes working outside the bounds of the law would often be in need of legal help. One such figure is the person of mass destruction that is Bruce Banner, aka the Incredible Hulk. Banner's temperamental alter ego has a tendency not to worry too much about collateral damage and property rights, so it's more than likely he would be on the end of a few charges. Reckless endangerment, destruction of private property, unlicensed demolition services, excessive noise violations. There's no end to what we could see Banner in court for. Traditionally, when the gamma-infused scientist finds himself as an active plaintiff, he calls up everyone's favorite blind lawyer, which is honestly a little rude considering his own cousin is a partner at a prestigious law firm. But I guess you just can't beat Matt Murdock's rates. There are a few famous examples of Murdock defending Banner. The first time was even a live-action movie. The Trial of the Incredible Hulk was a made-for-TV movie that continued on from the Bill Bixby television series. In the film, the Good Doctor, now named David Banner, finds himself arrested for hulking out at a bad time. He's also wrongfully framed for a crime by Kingpin himself. Assigned to his case is blind lawyer Matt Murdock, whose alter ego eventually teams up with Hulk to bring down Wilson Fisk. While this plot was loosely recreated with the Punisher in Daredevil Season 2, there is still plenty of room for more. I personally think the Kingpin dragging the Hulk into his criminal shenanigans is a bad idea. I get fighting a blind guy and a man with a bow and arrow, but the Hulk? He might be punching above his weight class, which is pretty impressive for a guy Fisk's size. Okay, so how about someone who could care less that Matt Murdock is a lawyer, and instead only cares that he has studied the blade? Daredevil has a long history of fighting ninjas. He's been consistently menaced by the evil criminal organization, The Hand. Not to be confused with TMNT's The Foot. The Man Without Fear is himself trained in the ancient and deadly art by his former master, Stick. Not to be confused with TMNT's Splinter. Guys, I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a parody of Daredevil. Murdock has tremendous skills and experience in fighting the most elusive of enemies. But you know who else is also known for kicking ninja butt? Our boy Wolverine. The clawed hero has a long history of traveling around Japan and facing off against secret martial arts-based organizations. In the comics, Logan and Daredevil have even fought each other's respective enemies. It's entirely possible that some personal vendetta leads Wolverine and Daredevil to cross paths. Then they can both team up to stab sneaky dudes in black outfits. Matt Murdock may have a bit of a lead on other heroes with 3 seasons and a team-up show, but he still has to re-establish himself in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. With just how much there is of the MCU these days, I often find it hard to get excited about a new show or movie. However, Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock has always been an ever-fresh portrayal for me. Seeing him catch that brick in No Way Home gave me more of a thrill than any of the previous Spider's men. If Disney can bring us the same level of violence, matureness, complexity, and grit that Netflix did, we will all be in for a real treat. Cox's Daredevil is a true noir hero and showed that the MCU could tell these kinds of stories. Being a full part of the universe means that Murdoch can truly exist beyond the streets of Hell's Kitchen, even if the show had you believe that Hell's Kitchen was New York's 6th borough.